Michelle Meow, producer of The Michelle Meow Show, which is, for some of you who've been here before, you'll hear it again. For those who've joined us for the very first time, it is your A through Z covering the LGBT, LMNOP, and everyone in between. I am also a member of the Board of Governors for the Commonwealth Club World Affairs, and so very happy that you are all here in person. I understand that there are some disruptions out there, lots of traffic, something's going on, and so be kind as people trickle in and make them feel welcome. But I'm also very, very honored and just so happy and ecstatic that our speakers are all here and they're going to share their magic with you. Tonight, we'll have a conversation about cultural appropriation. Ugh, what is a cultural appropriation? Well, our speakers will tell you from their heart, and so we'll have this open conversation. Let's get right to it. Let me do just some quick intros, and they'll also speak for themselves in terms of, the first question. But we have Rodrigo and Janine with Kwali Salsa, yes, and we have Aruna Lee, who's with Volcano Kimchi, Olivia Chen with Twirl Boba Tea, and then we have Tracy Go with Damansara. So let's give a big round of applause for all of our speakers tonight. And by the way, especially for those who do end up coming late, there's a special reception where we get to try a couple of our brand products today. And so that's a special treat, right? The first question is really, let's get to know you. Tell us about the inspiration, the drive behind your product, how you got there, you dreamt it, you made it. So let's go for it. So Rodrigo and Janine, do us the honors by starting first.
Yeah, of course. Thank you for having us. My wife Janine and I, we are the owners of Kwali Salsa. Basically, Kwali is a company that was born in our home. But the reason that I started making salsa is because I grew up in Mexico City with my mother, born and raised in Mexico City, and I used to always spend a lot of time with her cooking and basically salsa like most of the time. So for us, it's very special to bring the authentic flavors to the Bay Area. What else?
So what I would add is Rodrigo, as an immigrant, like when we met, very much was always on the search for and I'll translate right now. It's like, ¿Dónde está la salsa que pica? Like, no tiene sabor, no pica. So in short, saying I just can't find the salsa like I do in Mexico City. They lack flavor, they don't have any heat. Like, where is that? And so as he would make it, everyone pretty much very much encouraged us. Like, why didn't you all sell this? We actually started in the financial district. So it's really interesting to be here tonight. I used to work in the social sector, so I worked around this area. I did some of my first pop-ups at various offices in this area. And that's how the idea of the business was born. And then, little by little, eventually I left my career right before the pandemic hit. And then I was like, oh, what am I going to do now? I thought I was going to go on a sabbatical, but it was very much at home, figuring out my life. And so that's how we started. But I think at the root of that was, Rodrigo trying to find those flavors of Mexico. And I think we, till this day, have a lot of folks who will come, a lot of immigrants from Mexico who are like, thank you for bringing this flavor back into my life.
Yeah, some of the comments is like, finally, somebody's doing a very authentic or more traditional way where the flavors and the heat is the way it's supposed to be. Over here, I've been living here for almost 20-something years. Every place I used to go, where is the good salsa? Why is not spicy enough? So I remember bringing my own pepper in my pocket, kind of trying to fix it a little bit, or I bring an habanero pepper or something like that, which more heat, more flavor. So I also remember when you go to a Mexican restaurant, the salsas that they bring to the table, sometimes it's just very mild. But if you ask the chef on the back of the kitchen, it's like, hey, now bring me the
real stuff.
The real stuff is okay, but nobody is very spicy. Yes, that's what I'm looking for. So they always bring you a little plate with the kind of salsa they eat on the back of the restaurant. So
Yes.
That's basically some of those.
I'm glad I'm not that only person or the most annoying person when I do go to certain restaurants. I say, no, trust me, I can do it. Like Mui
Yes.
Pukate, we're like Northeast country Thailand. We can eat chili peppers like crazy. So this is great. This is great. I'm going to come back to you because it's interesting on this whole, salsa. You called it salsa. When you look at it, though, for us Asians especially, we see chili oil,
Yeah.
chili crisp, which almost got trademarked to. Never mind. Another story.
Yes.
Yeah.
Aruna, Volcano Kimchi, the inspiration, your dream, and kind of what drove you to the creation.
Hi, thank you for coming tonight. I been fermenting, making kimchi over a decade, and when I came here in 2001, and I missed the kind of kimchi I grew up eating. I was when I was 6, and I was adopted by Buddhist monk, and since then I grew up in a Buddhist monastery under mountains, and we wild forest vegetables and make pickles and kimchi and preserve for the winters. And when I was growing up, I wasn't necessarily liked much, all these salty, spicy kimchi and pickles. But when I came here, something that the way in Buddhist temple they create this kind of kimchi that without adding any onion, garlic, and green onions and chive, and there's another ingredient, 5 ingredients, and so I started the vegan and organic kimchi company in 2014. I would say the farmers market is my inspiration, where I can find seasonal ingredients to be creative and turn into something delicious, kimchi. When I started the Volcano Kimchi, I wouldn't say I was passionate, but more I found the passion and loved what I'm doing, and I am keep going. Thank you.
Awesome. So amazing. Olivia.
Hi, everyone. I'm Olivia Chen, co-founder of Toral, and I wanted to ask, how many of you have had a boba milk tea or heard of boba milk tea? Well, that's a lot of you. And so, like many of you, I grew up drinking boba milk tea, and my mom made it for me when I was growing up. And so as an adult, when I had celebrations, when I was sad, I turned to a boba milk tea. And when the pandemic hit, it was definitely an interesting time. So I turned to boba milk tea, but I couldn't. All the boba shops closed. And so Paulina and I, we've been friends for 20 plus years. And so she started iterating in her home kitchen. And so we created a concoction, basically today's boba milk tea, Toral. And it really just started here in San Francisco. And so it was born out of our home. And what makes us unique a little bit is we're completely dairy-free. So we're top 8 allergen-free. We're using single origin, small family farm teas. And so you can actually make a boba milk tea now in under a minute. And so that's a little bit about, what we are. And so hope to share more.
Awesome. Thank you. And last but not least, Tracy.
Hi everyone, my name is Tracy Go. I'm the owner of Damansara Malaysian restaurant in Noe Valley, San Francisco. And we just recently celebrated our 2nd year being a restaurant. But before that, how I started a restaurant was I came to this country for the first time in 2012, initially as an expat because of a tech company. An opportunity given to me by a tech company because my previous profession was in marketing, especially digital marketing. And so I just came here thinking that I would be here for only 2 years because that was the visa for 2 years. and I didn't know anybody, and one thing led to another. I left my profession, and I didn't know anybody in the city. So I started cooking because I wanted to find people, like-minded people who cared about food. I just was already very passionate about food. I grew up eating very well. My parents loved food. My mom loved to cook, and my dad just loved to take us out to eat all kinds of food, hawker food, like not necessarily anything fancy, but he was just very into trying everything. So I missed that, and I also missed the community, the togetherness of going out to try something. And I invited strangers to my one-bedroom apartment to try Malaysian food because I posted photos of my cooking on Instagram. Back then, 2011 to 2012, Instagram was kind of like a prototype. Not many people were on there. Because of my profession, I was in social media. I was on there, and I was just playing with the filters on Instagram, taking photos of my food. And people got really curious because they only saw photos, but they knew those dishes were different, but they couldn't. They didn't know much about Malaysia, so they started talking to me. So I instead of food is not something you can explain in words. So especially when Malaysian food is Malaysia is a very multicultural society, so I can't just in one paragraph explain to them what this is. So I just invited them to my apartment, total strangers, and more and more people started asking me, and I had a supper club just in my one bedroom, and that was that I was doing supper club maybe twice a month, or sometimes more frequently, for 8 years before I opened this restaurant.
Wow. We might have to start doing these programs at all of your locations or your homes. Okay, let's get right into it. Cultural appropriation, in your own words, from your heart. What exactly is it? So we'll begin with Janine and Rodrigo and go back down the line.
Whew. When I thought of this question and you asking it tonight, it just felt like I had all these flashbacks to the experience I've had as a daughter of immigrants, as a wife of an immigrant, as a first-gen Mexicana who exists in this country, and all the times that I've seen our culture, our food, our language appropriated, by the dominant culture in the US, which is, white people. And if I just think of this year and in business, I think it's to me, I'd love to give examples because we can have a definition, but how does that show up in our lives, And so it's, the times we've been at markets next to white vendors who sell salsas and, will come and tell you how much they fell in love with your culture, our culture, and took recipes from families in Mexico and now are coming here to start their own business and profiting off our cultures. And also, the reality is thriving and doing so. So, that's the sad part, there's folks who are out there supporting them. And so it just brings me to this place that I'm still it continues to happen. You showed us, at the start of the show, and I saw that all unfold on, as it happened on TikTok and people sharing out, and you're a part of you is it's 2024. And so I think this question that you pose also brings to me the question that I've been sitting with today of what allows this to continue to happen for our cultures, the ones we represent right now on the stage, for them to continue to be exploited the way that they have.
Mm-hmm. Anything to add, Rodrigo?
You just asked me about this is, I will give you an example, which is just sometimes we need to also share that chili oil also is part of our Mexican traditional salsas. A lot of customers in the Bay Area approach to us and say, "Hey, this is like this is Asian chili crisp." It's like, well, this is Mexican as well. Like, we also have this kind of salsa back in Mexico, originally from Veracruz. Now you can find it all over the country. It looks similar on the jar, but the flavors and the recipe and the technique is way different. Looks similar, but also it's very, very Mexican as well. So the difference, probably what I can say about Mexican, Mexican chili oil salsa macha, which is the macha name means smashed, right? Machacado. Or some other version says that the matcha means because comes from the word brave, right? Because normally it's very spicy. And also we pair with nuts or seeds, a combination of both, or maybe dry fruits too. A blend of peppers or maybe single pepper, all depends. So it's pretty cool to have that also in Mexico. Like, it's very related. I think peppers it started growing in Mexico, in Mesoamerica, like 6,000 years ago. And from there, with the Portuguese that came and kind of exchange seeds or all that stuff back in the days, it's like it kind of expand to the whole world. But it's pretty cool to have the peppers are originally from Mexico.
Yeah.
It's pretty cool.
Yeah. We'll come back to, again, like, the use of it and everything that's in it. And again, for all of you who are here in person, you're lucky because you get to try some later on. Aruna.
To be honest, this is a topic I am still learning about. Growing up in Korea, the term cultural appropriation wasn't something we talked about. So I don't know where to draw the line between cultural appropriation and appreciation. When I watched the video, my first impression was it could have been a language issue that came across awkwardly. And as an immigrant, English is my second language, and I know how hard it can be to express exactly what you mean, as you can see. At the same time, there are food products made in Korea that are filled with additives and preservatives that are made by Koreans. It doesn't automatically make them authentic. I believe, regardless of origins and traditions, when people can create something that are meaningful and impactful, they can make with integrity and care, and respect for the culture it comes from. And I'm here to listen, learn, and reflect. I believe these conversations are important. Yeah.
Very good. Olivia.
Well, so for me, cultural appropriation, is pretty important because we went viral because of this incident. And for me, it's a really layered one. And when I think about cultural appropriation, I think of, who has the right to be at the helm of a company, who has the right to be at the helm of a brand, who has that storytelling ability. And then I want to take a step back and I think to myself, as a Taiwanese American, as daughter of immigrants, as a Taiwanese American, I think to myself, growing up in the US, I was just a regular American kid playing at recess. studying the American Gold Rush, the California Gold Rush right here in California. But when I went home, I had Taiwanese food. I watched Taiwanese soap operas with my parents. And this duality of being Taiwanese American is a big part of my upbringing. And what's layered upon that is, Taiwan's future is actually very uncertain in the political landscape. And so when you layer that in, what does it mean to be Taiwanese American? What does it mean to be a Taiwanese American founder? Those are questions that I think about. And what's even more interesting and layered is that boba milk tea was founded in Taiwan, right? So it's even more important when you think about this cultural appropriation, this boba topic, this boba tea, and all of the things that are layered into it. And so when Pauline and I started this company, it really was rooted in a love for boba milk tea, a drink that we had as kids, and we wanted to share that love. And so, for us, we've really thought very consciously about, how do we want to build this company? What type of stories do we want to tell? Do we want to share more about the origin story? Does our packaging speak to that? Those are all details that I would say would make us a little bit different from the company that had some incidents since On Dragon's Den. And for me, I really focused, and we did a pitch. Essentially, that's why we went viral. I pitched to Simu saying, hey, Simu, there's a company like us, with founders that look like myself. And, we also have Popping Boba, but was made in Taiwan. And we have a milk tea company and a boba tea and boba toppings, and we'd love for you to try us. And, from us, that was just a really simple, just take a look at us. And we are really excited to share. And so some simple things that we've done has been, on our 3rd-year anniversary, we actually collaborated with the Taiwanese American Federation of Northern California, and we partnered with a Taiwanese American artist. And so on our special edition can, you actually can see famous landmarks of Taiwan, including our tree farms. We have a famous Taiwanese Formosan bear, which is indigenous only to Taiwan. So there were very thoughtful manners of what we wanted on this special edition can to celebrate not only us as a small women-owned business, but also to celebrate the birthplace of boba milk tea. And so those are things that I think you can do when you live and breathe that culture. But also what's unique about us is we're also Americans, right? So for us, this formulation that we have, this formula, this flavor, it has nitro infusion. It is plant-based, so it's dairy. It's not too sweet. It's under 9 grams, and it's 50 to 80 calories. So there are very distinct things that are very much about Pauline and I that we brought into this new boba milk tea. And so I love for people to kind of take a step back and think at the end of the day, there are many brands and many companies out there, but I think look at who the founders are and, where is their heart, and do they have, authenticity to kind of share the stories, and kind of would you want to listen to those stories? And so that's what I think is really important about this topic. And appreciation and cultural appropriation, I think those are all very layered questions, but at the end of the day, you have tremendous power with your dollars, right? You have the ability to decide who you want to support. And we're really, really grateful for our own viral moment, because it was thousands of DMs of people. We went from 350 on TikTok to 8,700 in just a matter of just a couple days. And so this topic that you and I have chatted about, it really resonates, and people do care.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. We'll come back to you about the results of pitching Simu later at the end. Yeah. Tracy.
I think, so coming from Malaysia, like I mentioned, it's a very multicultural country, and we've been that way since before Malaysia was called Malaysia, since before the borders were defined the way they are today. I'm actually ethnic Chinese, but 4th generation Malaysian. So I identify as Malaysian first, Chinese second. And I have spent half of my life living outside of Malaysia. So I left Malaysia in my early 20s. I'm 42 now. In between, I lived in Australia and now United States. So a lot of the what I do during my pop-up days and how my menu at the restaurant is today is a result of my personal experience. I've lived on 3 continents, so I picked up something on the way before I opened this restaurant. So cultural appropriation to me, or appreciation, is such a gray area and such a blurred line between that. But I think one thing for sure is that separates the two is we can actually borrow ingredients or something from another culture that we appreciate without devaluing something that someone's been doing for a really long time before you. The problem with that video, that pitch, was that after Simu Liu said what he said, the business owner became defensive, and he started saying, "Oh, but we don't know what they put in the boba over in Taiwan. They use maybe questionable ingredients." So that is unnecessary. If you appreciate it, you can use it. You can give credit. Simu Liu was talking about how there was no mention of anything Taiwanese on the label. It doesn't hurt anybody to just put it there. So I think that's like what separates the two.
Yeah, great points. Thank you. By the way, we will have a roving mic later. So for those of you who are in the audience, we want you engaged in this conversation and ask our panelists questions. Oftentimes I would ask myself, and I go through this all the time, even for me, right? American born here, but ethnically, right, Asian. And what is that fine, thin line where then it becomes exploitation? And so if we can give examples of this, and this is an open question for any of you who wants to just chime in, let's just have a big conversation, because I know some folks in the audience here, they do want to talk about this. So how do we know? Because a lot of the times, yes, we want to share everything about us, the authenticity of our culture and our food and our music. But then there is that fine, thin line, and then it becomes exploitation, or then it starts to feel like, okay, it's not borrowed, but possibly stolen. I know that was a really big question, but just
I
go
mean,
for it.
for me, when I think about the question and why, we were interviewed by the Associated Press and why we had a chance to kind of share our story, it really came down to who had a right to be at the table. We actually pitched to Shark Tank 3 times, and we never had the opportunity to get on the show. And this Dragon Den is the Canadian version of Shark Tank. And so to see a company that wasn't of heritage and have the ability to actually get $1 million. You had 3 judges that were fighting to get this $1 million. It was interesting, and it was interesting to see, their perspective from profit and making claims that they created popping boba. And so there was just so many interesting aspects of as I was watching this unfold, and so I spent a whole night thinking, like, do I want to share about us, right? As and Chinese and Taiwanese American, I grew up in a household where we're like, let's keep our heads down. Let's just like do our good work. Let's just head down. Let's work hard and you'll be rewarded. And I thought to myself, I knew we had pitched to Shark Tank 3 times. And so when would we ever have a chance to be at the table? And that's what I think about, this topic, and where I think is where we should center ourselves is, do we have a chance to change what's in our pantries? Do we have a chance to change what's in our fridges? Growing up, I did not see very many things of my culture in media. I didn't see them in books. And now that is changing, right? But I would say, all of us, we are fighting to have a chance for our products to be seen by buyers, to be recognized by the Whole Foods and Albertsons of the world. And it is a journey that is very difficult. And there are other founders that have been able to kind of have a fast pass, essentially. And essentially, shows like Dragon Den and Shark Tank, they give you that fast pass. And so, what we want to do collectively to talk about these issues is to say, give the fast pass to founders of heritage, founders who actually have the story ability because they come from that culture. And that's where I think I want to center that, because there's so many examples of, is it appreciation, is it attribution, is it appropriation? But I would say let's center and say, look, what do we all want at the end of the day? We want to be able to look at packaging and read stories that are beautiful about the founders, and did they come from Mexicana or Korea or all these things? I think that's what's the most interesting. And growing up, like I saw Coke, I saw Pepsi, Paul Newman. Was there ever Olivia Chen or Pauline Ang on a package? Well, today there is. The first time we decided to put our names on the packaging, Pauline and I were like, should we do it? And I was like, oh, let's just do it. We'll just try it. If we don't like it, we'll just change it. And it was so surreal to see like Pauline and Olivia, yours truly, or yours Teely. And so those are little things that I think is really changing, but it requires all of us. It requires all of us to collectively, say we want this change. And this topic, I'm so grateful because it gave us a platform to raise these issues. And I, really took a stance on being very positive about the experience. I could have gone very, very negative and like really nitpicked at what they were doing. But I decided to very focus on like, hey guys, this is who we are and this is what we're doing. If you're interested, we're here. Go support us at our stores, buy us. And I would say I would love that attention to be placed on all founders of heritage, all founders who are here with me on stage, to say like, this is what we want, right? And you really do have a chance. Like people ask like, what could you do? I was like, tag Target, tag Whole Foods, tag this, they're like, we want it in Canada. I'm like, well, tag each one of those retailers because it takes a lot of money. And what's ironic was the company was raising money to enter Albertsons, into our own backyard. Right? That's what's so ironic about the whole pitch and why they were raising money. And so I'm like, why not support a whole local grown US-based company to founders that are based right here in the US? Like, support us. There's plenty of founders that are doing the good work. So that's how I think about that question.
Thank you, Olivia. I just, I don't know about this term cultural appropriation, and I don't have an answer. I have more questions. And so at the end, is it more about equal access to minority groups and we get same resource as mainstream? So is that a part of a cultural appropriation, or it's just a question to everyone? And
yeah, I mean, I think a lot of times, when you think of books and you think of people who are on the other side, most of the buyers are male Caucasians. They're not of ethnicity. A lot of times when we pitched, to be honest, I would walk around the retailers. I would go to a Whole Foods. I would go to an Andronico's, and I would drop off a sample. And most of the buyers there were Caucasian males, and they would say, "Oh, I'll give it to my wife or I'll give it to my child," but they didn't grow up with milk tea or boba, so they couldn't really relate. And so there's a lot of education that goes around. So there's a lot of legwork that goes on, and so. For me, like when I think about having access to the table, having access to the retailers, there's a long journey, right? But if you have, like if you're a Starbucks and you can launch a popping boba, which they did this summer, they basically can kind of jump many, many hoops. They have the backing of millions and millions of dollars, and they can immediately roll out boba.
I'll never buy a Starbucks boba tea. I just Tracy,
Yeah.
Janine, go ahead.
Yeah. I think when you were speaking, Olivia, I think like yes to everything you said, and the other side that needs to kind of educate themselves. And this is where I get to challenge also as a founder of this company, but also like it's very exhausting. Like I'll just be real. Like I love that all that unfolded, and you could kind of come at it with more of a positive light. But I think I've just in 4 years of running this food business, just a little exhausted of having to always, educate. I think on the buyer's end, given who they represent, it makes sense. I have a perfect example, and I've been told as I get frustrated with, people who are not a part of our culture, who are making, the products that are so dear and sacred that sit at our tables, breakfast, lunch, and dinner, is like, well, don't worry about them. Whoever buys from them is like someone completely separate, except when I finally talked to a buyer here in the Bay Area who refused my product because they already had a salsa on their shelf that was made by a white person. And I was like, wow. Like, I think at that point I realized like there's a lot of education that needs to happen on the other side. I also love that you've empowered, because I also do as buyers. You spend your money at these stores. You get to walk in and say, hey, have you heard of Twirl? Have you heard of, Volcano Kimchi? For restaurants even, like I'd like to see their product on the shelf. And that's the power that you all have, as we fight behind the scenes, other battles with them. But it's just kind of, what you come across.
Mm-hmm. Anybody else want to add on the conversation of crossing that fine thin line between appreciation or exploitation even?
I think I have a solution approach to it. Is the world's becoming smaller with technology, internet, social media, TikTok these days. We cannot, instead of fighting them, because it's just exhausting. It's never ending. You fight this one off, you get the masses to cancel this brand, and another one pops up. It will never stop. There will just be more and more players. As soon as we the people of our own cultures build our own products up and they become hyped, which in my mind is actually great, because Malaysian food, nobody knows that here. If it happens, I'll be so happy. I'll be like, my job here is. So my approach is, we cannot waste our energy, especially as small business owners, waste our resources fighting these people. They're not going away. It's what can we do for our own brands, for our own products, our own businesses, is that they can imitate, they can buy the same ingredients, they can take someone else's recipe, they can make a good product, they can sell it. And whoever buys from them, sometimes I recognize are people who would have never listened to people like us anyway. We can't change people like that. They see us and they're like, you're not worth my time. I won't pay attention to you. But they see them, they're like, okay, maybe I don't know this product, but you kind of look and sound like someone I can trust. I'll try it. Maybe they try it, they like it, and they're like, okay, now I'm interested, I'm hooked. I want to go to the source. Maybe they will visit your country. Maybe they will visit the country of origin and learn more about it. And they can be converted, if not by us, maybe by someone else, but that can happen. It's not one or the other. All those things can overlap, and as business owners, all we can do is to change what we can change. The rest is just, it's out of our hands.
Yeah.
I mean, like we jokingly say we are the second best kimchi, but then people ask who's first. But I believe there will be always the best kimchi out there. It doesn't matter who makes, and if that person can be creative and using quality ingredients, and I think can make the best kimchi. So I really still struggling to understand the point of cultural appropriation. I understand your point, but also the kind of questions I have. I'm not
yeah.
saying
No,
it's
this
wrong
is-
or right.
No,
you
you're
know?
right. You're right. No, and this is again, we're having this conversation as a community, and I think listening to the creators, right, like hearing from you all is the biggest takeaway for us as consumers, as community members, to be kind and supportive to each other. Like, for example, if I was like, oh, I met Aruna here, I invited her to my program, and then I asked her what her recipe is, and then I took it, and then I called it San Franciscan Asian sauerkraut.
Because
I don't know.
you live in San Francisco.
Something. that might be like ripping you off or something. And then, and then I had access to all this. Anyway, I think that what we're getting at is, asking more questions about where you get your stuff too, and then supporting people locally, culturally, regionally. I think if the intent is positive, we're doing better than we were yesterday, for example. I'm going to end early, even though we have a few minutes left, because like I said, I want all of you who are here tonight, here at the club, to be able to have your private conversations with our brand creators, and then a couple of them have to leave earlier, just because they're parked, in a garage that closes soon at 8. The last question for all of you, it's a 30-second elevator pitch, as if you are on the Shark Tanks or the Dragon's Den, because honestly, at the heart of this conversation is understanding that for you, there's a different experience as far as like access to opportunities, capital, reach, all of that, right? And so 30-second pitch if you were on that show to your ideal supporter, consumer, and so on. Janine, Rodrigo, this is probably difficult for you, so you have to do it together.
Yeah.
Well, I was also a little guarding myself of not taking myself to that space of pitching, because that's another space where you educate and you have to prove. And I actually want to talk to all of you here tonight, because Kuali started in 2020 out of our home, and it's at this point shipped to 46 states because of the people from the Bay Area and nationwide who have seen us and appreciated what we do and how we do it. And that's how we're still in business 4 years later. So for now, it's been community, driven, and that's how we continue to be here, even with having such a difficult year. And so I just wanted all of you in this room, you've heard this conversation. I encourage you, you get to be allies in this work with all of us. Take this conversation. Talk to a friend. Hey, tonight I was at Commonwealth Club and we talked about this, and I met these founders, and these are their businesses. Holiday season's here. You're looking for gifts. We're here, But continue to show up. It's been a hard year for small businesses. I personally already know of a few who will be closing their doors starting January. So you have a favorite small business, show up for them. Go support them. Go share their page.
That's good.
Aruna.
We make everything handcrafted, and it's really hard to scale and grow when you do everything done by hand. And one of my dream is to see we could create a fermentation cafe and learning center where people can gather and learn the art of fermentation, and then share our healthy and delicious meal. And so that's I'm hoping we could create in San Francisco in coming years. Thank you.
So, Paulina and I started in our home kitchen, and it's been 3.5 years. Today, we're in about 2,000 plus stores. We're the number 3 boba search term on Amazon. Wow. And we have a run rate of over 1 million. And so, we've bootstrapped this company completely by ourselves. And so today, we are fundraising. It's a tough time, but we're really, really excited. And the reason is because we're talking to Albertsons, we're talking to Target, we're talking to Walmart. And why does that matter? It really matters because, as this journey unfolded and we got so many DMs, people were like, I want to buy you and I want to support you. Where can I do it at my local store? Most of us, do shop at our local stores, right? And so though we're online on our website and on Amazon, at the end of the day, for a company like us to really be a household name, we need to be in more stores. And so that's what the investment is really about. It's really about helping us to scale and to get to that next level. And every milestone is such a critical one. And so women that are in this business, a lot of them are closing their doors. We have a friendly competitor that has already announced that they're selling or trying to get out of the business. And so those are the things that we're trying to overcome. And so I hope, as some of us have holiday gifts, and hope you can have a chance to, perhaps be one of our early investors with us.
Woo. Crazy.
For me, I have had Damansara for 2 years, and it's been difficult. We opened just as everyone was just coming out of the pandemic, the lockdown, and still very hesitant to go dine out. And as a full service restaurant, to-go orders are not going to save us. So and also as a Malaysian restaurant, I can tell you in San Francisco, there are only two Malaysian-owned Malaysian restaurants. And both of us are women. And it takes, like I said, there's no one short way of explaining what Malaysian food is. You just have to experience it. And we are looking for someone who believes in us, who sees the gap in the demand, like in this, because the whole time I was doing those pop-ups in my apartment, I did not think about wanting a restaurant. I just wanted to share my food with as many people as possible. I wanted to touch people with my food. I kept making my table longer and longer, inviting more and more people. And I would, with every dish I served, I would go to the table and speak to people. And like this, they can ask questions. I brought raw ingredients for them to play with, to smell, to taste. It takes a lot of education, and every day I find myself and our front of house team having to repeat all these things to everybody that gives us a chance, comes through and looks at our menu and go, where do I start? I don't know any of these things. It's a lot of work for me as just one. I'm the sole owner. I don't have partners. I don't have investors. So I think I have done everything that's possible, that's humanly possible for someone like me who came just 12 years ago. I built my community. I joined La Cocina. I learned how to become an entrepreneur. I've done my training. The next is for some funding to help us to get this brand, the word out. We need to expand. We need to reach more people.
All right. Ready, set, go. All of you do everything in your powers that you can to support all of our speakers. Thank you so much for coming tonight and joining the conversation on cultural appropriation. Let's turn that appropriation into appreciation. Be kind to one another. It's the holidays. Let's support one another. I'm Michelle Meow. You can find me here at the Commonwealth Club World Affairs. Our last program for the year is December 19th. I hope you'll join me. The end of the year program is always a huge celebration, and we're going to be doing some human connection with local photographer Harry Williams. So I hope you join me. I'll see you all out there. Have a happy and safe holidays.